Welcome to another episode on the People Productivity Channel, where you are the product and a better you is the solution. Today, I have on a special guest and a friend, Larry Bonfante. He is a great guy. I met him, when he was on the speaking circuit. He was the CIO of the USTA, and that might be the most crazy couple of weeks to run an IT organization. If you look at the date and the number of things that have to happen, how everything has to stay up. I was always very impressed. Larry went on to write a book back in 2011, which was really good. And he most recently wrote a new book, Reflections of an Executive Coach. And the book is fantastic. Book just came out on Amazon. And I brought Larry on today because there are a lot of really good life lessons in this book that are very simple. And I think everybody can learn from them. So without further ado, Larry, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Good morning, Frank. It's great to spend time with you as always. I'm Larry Bonfante. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I spent 35 years as an IT executive in corporate America, the last 15 as the CIO of the United States Tennis Association, 10 years prior to that in various global leadership positions at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And for the last 10 years, I've had an executive coaching practice. The last 3 years, I've been running that full time. My practice is called CIO Bench Coach, and really I work with all kinds of executives in all functional disciplines to really work with them on what I call the competencies in human dynamics, which is something that's so critical for us in our success as executives. And to Frank's point, I just recently had my new book come out on Amazon called Reflections of an Executive Coach, which highlights not only my own experiences as an executive for 35 years, but more importantly, I've worked with more than 350 executives across all industries and all companies, and some of the lessons I've learned from working with them and some of the takeaways and best practices on being an outstanding executive.
Yeah, so, you have a couple of themes that, you've uncovered over there, like why versus how, what's in it for them. Let's talk about some of this, and then we can get into some of the, chapters of your book, which I think on their own, each one stands alone. By the way, folks, very easy read. You can read any one of these lessons. It's a, chapter and a half, few pages, very simple. So pick it up, put it down, come back to it. So Larry, why versus how?
I think it's so critically important. Most of us, and especially those of us who work in IT, we're great at focusing on how.
Yeah.
If I ask any IT executive, he or she could hand you an 87-page Gantt chart on all of the dependencies and timeframes and the plans and the tasks to get things done. But until people understand why something is important, what the real root cause of what we're trying to accomplish and what the value proposition is, not only for your audience, but for you as an individual who's involved in that project and that initiative, all the hows don't mean a hill of beans unless we're focused on why and we're motivated by why.
Well, that's exactly right. And people do focus on how we're going to get it done frequently, right? And never go back to ask, why is this so vitally important? That purpose, that meaning.
Absolutely. What I tell my executive coaching clients is we need to kind of reverse what we do. Usually we spend 90% of our time focusing on how and 10% on why. And we need to flip that around, because not only at the beginning when you're launching an initiative, but throughout the course of the initiative, people get fatigued. Kind of transformation is like a marathon, and halfway through you get tired. If people forget why, and if people aren't focused on the end game and what it means for them, it's very easy to get fatigued and kind of lose track of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And then, what's in it for them?
To me, this is just a basic philosophy. And when I do my workshops, I tell people the goal of this philosophy is not to turn you into Mother Teresa. But the reality is that, most of us, as human beings, we all look at the world through our own lens. From the minute we wake up in the morning to the minute we go to sleep at night, we look at life through how it impacts us. I always tell you the story that for 15 years I used to drive over the Tappan Zee Bridge to get to work. And I think of myself as a relatively nice guy. But if there was an accident on the bridge and I saw a message come up about a half an hour delay, as nice a guy as I'd like to think of myself, my first reaction was, oh, I hope those poor people are all right. My first reaction was, oh my goodness, I'm going to be late for my first meeting. So we all look at life through our own lens.
Yeah.
What's critically important is for success in any endeavor, we need to work with people and through people and get people motivated to want to do the things we need them to do. So understanding what's in it for them, focusing on the value proposition for them and getting them excited and motivated as to what they can glean from the experience is a much better way of getting success than trying to get them excited about what we care about in our agenda.
Yeah. It's interesting, as a CIO across multiple companies, and at one of them, not to name names here, one of the executives that worked for me, one of the senior leaders, I kept getting feedback. Nobody liked this individual. And I went to talk to the business. And what I uncovered when you really read between the lines is every time he met with them, it was his agenda. He
Right.
never spent any time figuring out what their agenda was, why this would matter to them. And they just didn't want to help him,
Sure.
you know?
And so,
Selfish guy, totally selfish. And I gave him that feedback.
and Frank, you touched on something else that's critically important that's adjacent to that, which is likability. You
Yes.
know, we all want to work with people who are talented and are very good at what they do. But if we're going to spend a lot of time with people, we also want to work with people who
Yeah.
we're working with. And, I had a major project at Pfizer for our Asia Pacific group, and the customer for that endeavor, at the end of the engagement, and he was a demanding customer, he said to me two things that were both meaningful. The first, he said, "Larry, your team did a great job and we appreciate the great results." But the second thing he said to me was more meaningful, which is, "We really enjoyed working with you and we look forward to having the opportunity to partner with you again." And
Yeah.
that's so critically important that we create a dynamic where people want to work with us, because we've all had the experience of somebody who's very talented, but whenever they walk into the room, kind of you have to catch your breath and center
Yeah.
yourself, because it's going to be a painful experience. So that likability factor and that being easy to work with is so critically important to our success.
And that is one of the lessons in your book. Likability is a core competency or something, right?
Absolutely. I think it's as important a competency, quite frankly, as any other skill set that we bring to the table.
I think so. And that, plays into the fact that you like to and put people at the center of everything.
To me, when all is said and done, people talk about legacies. Legacy is the impact you have on other people, to me.
Yeah.
So it's great that you're hitting P&L, metrics. It's great that you're driving your stock price, and that's all wonderful and important. And that's why we're in business. I'm not debating that. But at the end of the day, what you really leave behind is the impact you have on other people, helping them grow on their journey, helping them become successful. So to me, putting people at the center not only helps them, but it helps you, because all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah. And, we basically, in general, remember the people who actually helped others as a society.
And Frank, it's amazing that you do little things that you don't really give second thought to, but they could be so impactful. Sometimes, a person's going through a difficult time and you're just there at the right time to offer a word of encouragement or to support them in some way that you don't even give it a second thought.
Yeah.
Later they come back and share with you how meaningful that was to them. So it's really so important that we carry ourselves with that kind of a focus, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really important too. And, when we think about people, one of the problems that came out of the industrial era is that people were parts.
Yeah.
And, I love that piece of your book. People are not baseball cards.
Yeah, it's so critically important. I had an experience with an executive that we were going through a major transformation where we were moving half of the company to another site, which
Yeah.
was thousands of miles away. And his perspective was, well, as long as I replace one person with the skill set with another person with that skill set, nothing's changed. And my perspective is, people are not baseball cards. And the analogy I used with him is, you've got a 280 hitter, and you think if you replace him in the 2-hole in the lineup with another 280 hitter, nothing's changed. But that 280 hitter was Derek Jeter. And in the playoffs, he becomes Babe Ruth, and he's a leader in the clubhouse, and people follow him. So that's not the case. And the reality is, organizations are living, breathing organisms. And
Yeah.
it's like a Jenga board. When you move one piece, the whole thing is shifted. So even if you replace a skill set, there's still human dynamics to come into play, and you
For
need to
sure.
person as an individual and understand that the organization is nothing more than the amalgamation of all those individuals working together and developing a common culture.
Yeah, and it is that social capital people build up over time, the institutional knowledge, all these things that you just can't replace. We were having a conversation with some executives, and they were trying to realign meetings in the company. People were spending too much time in meetings. And the root cause wasn't that people were inept and couldn't have smaller meetings. The root cause was they had actually treated people like, jelly beans. And, all the people with the institutional knowledge were gone. So they had to get incredible number of people together to try to discuss something, none of whom really understood or saw the big picture. So it was endless meetings,
Yeah,
and they made a strategic error. That was the problem.
absolutely. Plus, people use meetings in a CYA kind of way. that, yeah, well, we discussed this, so there's a lack of trust there. And until you build that trust and you know
Yeah.
what to expect of people, what they expect of you, then you're meeting yourself to death. And if you're in meetings all the time, then you're not getting anything productively accomplished.
Yeah. Let's talk about baggage. You have a couple of chapters in your book on baggage.
Sure.
Everyone has baggage. Every job has baggage.
Yeah, so the two analogies. I had a client of mine, wonderful person, a person I've known for many years, and he's become a personal friend over the years. And he had a gentleman on his team that had some deficits, and he was considering, separating with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, before you do that, tell me a little bit about the positive qualities that this person had.
Yeah.
And he told me how customer focused he was, how everybody loved him, how he was the hardest worker he had, he didn't have a bad cell in his being. And I said, well, you just rattled off a pretty impressive laundry list of wonderful qualities about this person. Before you separate them, realize two things. One is everyone has baggage. So
Yeah.
you and I are both, I'd like to think of us, both of us as successful executives. I'm Samsonite, you're American Tourister. So if they're trading you in for me, I have different baggage from you, but at the end of the day, we both have deficits. So you're only trading one set of baggage for another set of baggage. The other thing is every job has baggage. People think they're going to go somewhere where the grass is greener. And I always use the analogy for people, my dream job, I play the guitar in a rock band. My dream job would be to be Eric Clapton. Because when I think of Eric Clapton, all I think of is the 2 hours he's on stage at Madison Square Garden doing what I think is fantastic. What I don't see is all the times he's on tour buses, on airplanes, fighting with the record company because he hasn't had an album out in years. So even people who have what we consider to be dream jobs, there's stuff that comes along with that that's not fun, and you got to plow through that stuff. So when thinking about jobs, you also got to realize that anywhere you go, there's going to be distasteful aspects of it, and that's just part of being an adult. You have to kind of plow through that stuff.
It's funny, years ago, one of the big companies, we were having a conversation, because the executives, if you'd been in a company for a while, they eventually knew what baggage you had. Everybody has it.
Sure.
And when they were out interviewing replacements, we all said, they just don't know what baggage these people have. So they fall in love with them. And then, a year later, like, oh, wow.
Right. Well, they're the bright and shiny thing. So people fall in love with that. And, but we all have our baggage. It's good to know what people's baggage is. And one of the things I think is so important, obviously I'm a fervent believer in developing people, but I'm also a believer in playing to people's strengths. If you got Shaquille O'Neal on your team and you put him under the basket, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. If you put him behind the 3-point line, it's going to be a circus. So it's about understanding the talents people have and playing to their strengths and finding ways to mitigate the challenges of their weaknesses. So sure, you want to develop their weaknesses, but if you play to their weaknesses, they're going to fail. And that's not an indictment of them. It's an indictment of you as a leader.
Yeah, that's right. And, knowing everybody's strengths and trying to align it really matters because that's where their passion is anyway. They're going to feel great about what they're doing. The level of self-motivation is going to be higher. I think one of the things that's interesting about your book, given what we're going through, is that you start with a reality check. Control is an illusion.
And certainly the last few months we've been through, if nothing else tells us control is an illusion.
And you wrote that before COVID, Larry.
I did. So unfortunately, I was prophetic. I wish I hadn't been. But the reality is there's only so many things we can control in life. And most of us have gotten to a level of the executive status. To a certain degree, we're control freaks, and we'd like to kind of orchestrate everything. But life changes under us whether we like it or not. And all we can do is adapt to it. So adaptability is critically important. And all we can really control is how we show up. And I think that's critically important as well.
Yeah, that's super important. And, that's a lot of the resilience that individuals bring to the plate. Life has a better plan, you say, sometimes.
We all have an idea of we have mapped out what we'd like to see happen and how we'd like to see things progress. And, sometimes they do, oftentimes they don't. And what I found in my life is that some of the times when things happened that I could, at the moment, felt like a setback, actually not only got me back on track, but got me on a better track. So sometimes what we have to do is view change as an opportunity and leverage that opportunity. And things almost never go exactly the way we plan.
No.
I talk about, in the book, the famous line from Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And whether you like it or not, it's how we respond to that and how we kind of adapt to the realities of a changing world that are going to make us successful. So as the best laid plans of mice and men. We got to get used to the fact that things aren't always going to go the way we want. And that's okay, because sometimes they actually go in a better direction than we anticipated.
Oh, I mean, the number of stories you can read from people who say the greatest thing that ever happened in my life was I got fired and I had to go find myself.
Absolutely. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of times things happen that feel uncomfortable at the time, but that discomfort first forces you to grow and forces you to take risks that you might not have taken that lead you to a better path.
Yeah. Hey, don't be a rebel without a clue.
So I learned this. I had the privilege when I was working at Pfizer of having an executive coach, a young woman by the name of Tamara Fuller. And she was very meaningful for me. It's the first time I worked with an executive coach. And that's when I became a proponent of the coaching process. And when we did my 360 review, it was really an eye-opener for me. So the good news was my clients loved me because they felt I got great results and they thought my team was great to work with. My people loved me because they felt I had their back. And matter of fact, one comment I got, which was one of the greatest compliments I ever got, was one line in the 360 said, Larry's people would kick down the gates of hell for him. And I always felt tremendously good about that.
Yeah, that's a big statement. I love it.
So I really relished that. But what I didn't realize was my management, while they appreciated the results I got, they felt that was a pain in the neck because I was always trying to challenge things to make things better. And in my mind, I was just trying to improve things, but in their mind, I was wearing them out emotionally. So what
Yeah.
she taught me was, you know, there are things that you can change that are important. You have passion about it and they're core to who you are. And you should put all your energy and all your bullets behind changing those things. Then there are things you're never going to change. And all you're doing is wasting your cycles and annoying the hell out of people.
Yeah.
So, you know, to understand what battles do I fight and what battles do I like hold my tongue. So that whole rebel without a clue was really important to me because I was wasting a lot of emotion and a lot of energy on things I wasn't going to change. And all I was doing was annoying people in the process.
Yeah. That's a really important lesson in corporate because I went through it myself, you know, eager, you know, to kind of go out, use tech to change everything. And there's a lot of fun in that. But of course, not everybody wants their cheese moved. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing you got to realize, and I share this with my clients all the time, is you're on a ship and you can only go as fast as the ship is going. If
yeah.
you try to go faster than the ship is going, you wind up going overboard into the water. So you need to be able to gauge your desire to drive change. And I'm a very type A New Yorker, so my motor goes fast, but you've got to understand that you can only go as fast as the ship you're on will allow you to go and kind of adapt to the reality you're working with. Otherwise, you turn people off in the process.
You know, yet the status quo is the enemy of everything that's yet to be invented, right? As
Absolutely.
one of my guests said on the show.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the book, you talk about that balance where, you know, do something, stop the inertia, because some people get very much caught up in not changing things. You know, you were the opposite, I was the opposite, but.
Well, it's so important. You know, people are waiting to have all of the data. They're waiting for the perfect moment. They're waiting for everything to be lined up. And if you're waiting for things to be perfect, you know, I'm 61 years old. I've never done anything perfect in my life, right? And there is a closing window of opportunity that if you don't take advantage of that window of opportunity, the competition will. So to me, it's about taking action. Obviously, you need to do your homework. Now, I'm not saying ready, fire, aim. But once you've done your due diligence, take action. And when things start to go sideways, which inevitably they will in some way, shape, or form, then you do mid-air correction. But it's so important to take action and break through the inertia of the status quo and at least start to get momentum and moving down the road.
Yeah, because much of the learning comes from doing. And if you're not doing, you're not learning.
Absolutely. I always joke with people that the only way a turtle could move is by sticking its neck out. So you need to stick your neck out of your shell and actually start to move and take action before you can adapt and get better.
Yeah, no, you know, you've been a great coach, obviously, and you enjoy developing leaders. And, you know, speaking to everybody out there, this is a time when people have to just reinvent themselves, and leaders should be developing the next generation of leaders under them. You know, what do you have to say based on your experience to what we see in the world now?
I think that developing leaders and developing a culture of leadership within your organization is the greatest thing you can do for your company. You know, an individual leader can certainly move the change to a certain degree by him or herself, but the only way you're truly going to transform an organization is that leadership filters through the entire organization. Because if you're a one-person roadblock that all the decisions have to come through you, then it's a house of cards. What you need is that everybody on the team gets it, they understand the expectations, and they have the capabilities to lead at their level so that they could act autonomously. You know, I always tell people, if you're going to hold somebody accountable for an outcome, then you have to give them the autonomy to do it the way they see fit. So the only way you do that is by instilling leadership in people and allowing them to grow and allowing them to make mistakes and take risks and learn and do things.
You know, we're in an era where really hierarchies are going to shrink considerably. And in reality, everybody becomes somewhat of a leader, right? Because they can have influence and drive change. So, you know, everybody matters, right?
Without question, if you look at world-class organizations, they're organizations where everyone has the sentiment that leadership begins with me, that I'm accountable for my piece of it. And as long as I do that and I do it well, then we have a chance of success, you know, as opposed to worrying about somebody else. You know, I used to joke that when I was a kid, we had a third baseman on my team who wasn't particularly good and didn't have a lot of range. So the shortstop used to move over a little bit more to third base. Well, that's great, but when that happens, balls start getting hit up the middle for base hits that would have been caught by the shortstop. So everybody's got to play their position and contribute. And only when everyone sees their role and takes that leadership accountability, you have a high-performing team.
Yeah, for sure. Baseball is a great analogy, you know, because when people leave their position, it becomes just painfully clear that you've created a gap.
Absolutely.
Hit it up the gap, right?
Exactly. And everybody's got to do their job. You know, I'm not a big fan of him because he's always beating my Jets left and right. But Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots, I mean, his mantra is do your job. And if everybody does their job and if everybody plays their leadership position, then the team wins.
I'll tell you, the Belichick coaching system has got to be incredible.
Yeah.
Right. And
certainly a high level of accountability and a high level of empowerment.
Yeah. So as, you know, over the years coaching people, I guess you've encountered a lot of people who question balance in their life, right? You have stories in your book about that. Yeah. And COVID has caused people to rethink and reflect on their life. I mean, what are you finding?
Balance, to me, balance is critically important. You know, if you're the CEO of a company making millions of dollars, but you know your wife has divorced you and your kids look at you as a human ATM machine, then to me that's not a definition of success.
Yeah.
To me, success is in every aspect of your life, that the people that you touch in every aspect of your life feel that you're adding value for them. So I think it's critically important. And also self-care, because if you're working yourself to a nub, you know, Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw. If you're not giving yourself the chance to recharge the battery and do the things that, you know, kind of feed your soul, then you don't have the wherewithal and the resources you need to be the best leader you can be. And then, you know, you're going to be short with people. You're not going to have the patience. You're going to need to be a great leader for people. So I think balance is critically important. And I tell my clients all the time, because now with COVID, it's so easy to stick your feet under the desk at 6 o'clock in the morning and not walk away at 10 o'clock at night. Sure. And you need to get away, you need to recharge, you need to kind of have some semblance of sanity and normalcy in order to be there and be present for people.
Yeah, and as a leader, to make sure that people are basically maintaining some balance, signing off, because it's too easy to, you know, sign on in the morning and sign off at night and pretty much just forget everything else.
Yeah, and the other thing is, whether you realize it or not, people are going to model your behavior. So if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not treating your people with that kind of dignity and consideration, they're going to model their own behaviors. Right?
Yeah.
You know, if you get an email at 2 o'clock in the morning and you respond to it, that's telling somebody it's okay to send you an email at 2 o'clock in the morning and expecting an immediate response. So, you know, people are going to model what we do. So if we don't set the right expectations and the right behaviors by the way we carry ourselves, you know, what you do speaks so loud, I can't hear what you say.
It's funny, when I walked in as a CIO of one of the companies, you know, after the first couple of meetings, I realized everybody was on their BlackBerry in the meeting, trying to make sure they weren't going to miss an email. And it turned out the guy I replaced was on his BlackBerry in meetings all the time. And that is exactly what happened. They were modeling his behavior, became the culture.
Yep.
Without a doubt. And that's how it works.
Yeah, you got to be very cognizant that as a leader, all eyes are on you. And you got to make sure you're carrying yourself and you're walking the talk.
Yeah, for sure. And I think many people don't do that. You know, they do not walk the talk. They talk the talk.
That's true.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And that gets down to the importance of self-awareness, self-management.
Yeah,
one of the great derailers, right? Lack of.
Yeah, and to me, you know, the whole idea of emotional intelligence is so critically important, and that self-awareness of understanding the way people perceive us, the way our actions have ramifications and have implications in our organization is critically important. And self-awareness is critical, but then you need to take self-action. I mean, it's one thing to be aware of what you're doing. It's another thing to be able to have the discipline to change it. So I recognize some of my foibles, but being able to fix them is a little harder. So being able to have the discipline to once you've identified a flaw in yourself, to catch yourself in that space and say, all right, I'm going to consciously act to do something differently and change that is very important, but very, very challenging for all of us.
Yeah. And that gets me back to that famous line, right? If you think you could change others, just think of the difficulty you've had changing yourself,
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've needed to lose 20 pounds for 30 years. I know exactly how to do it. And I do it. I lose some of it and I take steps to do it, but do I have the discipline to do it on a consistent basis? So it's about the only person you could really change in life is yourself. So what are you doing to make yourself the best leader you can be, so to give you the example you need to be for your team?
You've been through other downturns and uncertain times. What advice do you have for the folks out there who really are questioning things right now and facing uncertainty? Maybe I think a lot of people are actually suffering. I know. I mean, that's what's going on. So what do you have to share with them?
There's an old line that tough times never last, tough people do. And I think that's true. It's very easy to cut corners and do things to make the next quarter when you're in a situation like we're in right now. But you should always do what you know is right for the long term. Now, I understand there are economic realities and there are business realities that we have to be real about and receptive to and deal with. But you should never do something that you know is wrong, or do something that you kind of, your gut is telling you that's not the right answer. The only thing you could lose that you can't regain is your integrity. So you should be true to your integrity. You should do what you know is right, even though it may not be popular, even though it might be easier to take the shortcut now, because long term, things will get back to some semblance of normalcy and people will remember. People in a company like Salesforce, where their CEO, Mark Benioff, has treated them with tremendous respect and done the right thing in the community, they'll remember that in a positive way. And people in companies that have done the wrong thing by their people just to make the next quarter so that the street doesn't tank their stock, people are going to remember that too.
Yeah,
okay?
without a doubt.
Bolt out the doors, they will. So you should always treat people the same way, whether things whether the sun is out or whether you're in the middle of a thunderstorm. Your integrity shouldn't change. The way you treat people shouldn't change.
Yeah, and be transparent.
Critically,
Share what's really happening. I found that to be just so important. Whether good or bad, share the news.
Tell people as much as you can, as soon as you can, as honestly as you can. And granted, there are times you don't have all the answers.
Yep.
Tell them that. There are times you can't tell them everything you know for various reasons. That's fine. But as much as you can tell them, keep them apprised, because what happens is when there's a lack of information, people create misinformation. And oftentimes that misinformation is actually more dire than the reality. So if you're honest with people and you tell them the truth, they'll at least respect that you're being real with them. And I think that's all anyone could expect of a leader, is that they're being authentic.
Yeah. So in an era where, we're going through just this next big wave of automation, robotic process automation, AI, companies are shrinking, new competitors are coming up. What do you see the future of leadership being? Do you see it being different, or is it the successful leaders of the past, going to be the ones who can still lead in this new era?
So I guess the best way to answer that question is I think that the core of it remains the same, but you need to adapt to your reality. And the example I use is Pat Riley was the coach of the Lakers, and he won multiple championships with them. And he had a team with Magic Johnson and James Worthy and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who they call Showtime. They were very athletic, very fluid, wonderfully graceful basketball players. Then later on, he became the coach of the Knicks. And the Knicks weren't thoroughbreds like the Lakers were. They were more like plow horses. They were Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley, big, tough, strong guys. And he kept his core principles of leadership, but he adapted to the reality and adapted to the talent around him. So what I'd say is that as the world changes around you, the core of the leader doesn't change, but the leader is able to adapt to new realities and new situations as they occur.
Yeah, adaptability is, is going to be the vital phrase of this era. It's that high
without question.
level ability to adapt.
It's about how do you, if you're waiting, I remember an employee of mine coming into my office at Pfizer, and we were going through tumultuous change. And he said to me, when are we going to get back to normal? And I looked at him and I said, Tony, this is normal. Normal is constant change. It's not an event that happens once, it's constantly in flux. And we've got to not only deal with that, we've got to embrace that, because if we do embrace that and get in front of that, then we can actually help lead our teams to a better place.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, any parting thoughts for the folks out there?
I think that certainly this is a very challenging time, but always remember, challenge brings with it opportunity. And based upon how your mindset works and how you look at things, we can leverage that opportunity to make things better. So hang in there, plow through the tough times, do the right things, care about people, and be there for your people. And I think in the long term, we will see the end of this, and we will get to a better place. And we'll look at this as just a bookmark in the longer chapter of what we're doing.
Yeah, accept this as an opportunity to evaluate where you are, maybe reinvent yourself, pursue education and other things that you've wanted to do and maybe couldn't. By the way, I do recommend everybody pick up Reflections of Executive Coach. That's a bargain on the Kindle version, actually.
Yeah, my goal was not to monetize this, and my goal was not to be J.K. Rowling, the Harry Potter lady.
Yeah.
My goal was to kind of share my experiences with people, so hopefully they can get some benefit out of it. So I hope it helps folks.
So folks, Reflections of an Executive Coach. I think it's $2.99 on Kindle, right? Something?
$2.99 Kindle, $9.99 paperback, so it's not going to break the bank.
No, it's actually, and it's a real fun read. A lot of great stories. So Larry, buddy, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. It was great.
It was a pleasure to be with you, and keep up the great work that you're doing with your team.
Will do, buddy. Thank you. Bye.